Hey team, it's Les. Thanks for joining me today for another CHOT Training Minute. Today we continue talking about the CAHPS survey and the individual questions that make up that survey. And today we're talking about another one of those communication questions. It's question number 10 on the survey, and it reads, while your family member was in hospice care, how often did anyone from the hospice team give you confusing or contradictory information about your family member's condition or care? And unlike all the questions that we've talked about up to this point, we want this answer to be never. We never want to be giving confusing or contradictory information to a caregiver. And so how do we do this? Well, the best practice is this: having consistent communication. Consistent communication with our team members. So from one team member to the next, from one team member to the rest of the team, that's going to ensure consistent communication with the caregiver. So if we're all on the same page and all communicating what we're communicating with the caregiver, then we can make sure that that message is consistent along all disciplines to that caregiver. So what are some things we can do? Well, first of all, read coordination notes. One thing that I did a long time ago is started reading coordination notes before I would make visits to a family or a patient. And what this does is it allows us to go back to the last few visits of either our same discipline. So if I was going out on call and I was going to go see a family that I wasn't familiar with, I would want to read the last of those nursing notes and then the other discipline notes as well to see what it was being communicated, to kind of catch up and figure out what was happening with the communication with this family and with the patient. So read those coordination notes, and hand in hand documented what was communicated during your visit with the caregiver clearly in those coordination notes. So actually, like we talked about with documentation before, tell the story, right? Tell the story. Each of your coordination notes should be a story about that visit that you had with that patient and with the caregiver. And part of that is what was communicated with the caregiver. So if I saw Mr. Smith and I assessed Mr. Smith, and at the end of the visit, Mrs. Smith and I were walking to the front door, we're going to sit down in the living room and have a chat. And she says, Les, how long do I have left with Mr. Smith? And I might say, well, Mrs. Smith, we've talked about this before. We've been doing some training, but here's what I'm seeing today. Mr. Smith's feet are starting to do that modeling, that discoloration that we talked about because the oxygenation to his extremities is poor. Mr. Smith, you told me, is no longer eating. He hasn't had anything to eat for 3 days, and he's only taking small sips of fluids, and he's only waking up to say a few words and then going back to sleep and sleeping the rest of the day. So based on all the things I'm seeing, I think Mr. Smith may be down to days or weeks, not weeks to months. And I'm going to put that just like that, almost verbatim, into my coordination note so that when the next nurse or the social worker or the spiritual care coordinator or the aide or volunteer or the volunteer coordinator goes to see this patient, they can read clearly what I communicated to Mrs. Smith. And we can all be on the same page, and it helps the nurses and the rest of the staff be able to look for those things and see if they're still there, or maybe the condition has gone down the road a little bit and worsened. And so we know what was communicated to Mrs. Smith, and we don't have any question about that. Finally, if you go in and you're reading the coordination notes and you're not seeing exactly or getting a clear picture exactly of what was communicated with the caregiver, click your team members, click the nurse or click the social worker, the spiritual care coordinator, or the aide and say, hey, I'm about to go see Mr. Smith. Can you just give me a brief update on, you had a visit 2 days ago. What was communicated? Is there anything special I need to know? I want to make sure we're on the same page. And that builds teamwork and builds our communication skills with each other so that then we can turn around and be consistent and clear on our communication with the patient and with the caregiver. That's all I've got today. As always, if you have any questions, don't hesitate to reach out to me via click or email. And I want to thank you so much for everything you do every day for our patients, our caregivers, our facilities, and for one another. Y'all have a great day.